Hello. So a quick follow-up from yesterday's video, and Affinity have put out a statement slash pledge, I guess. I put a video out quite early in the morning, and since then, obviously the response from the broader community and social media has come in. They weren't happy, to say the least. Um, and but they've come back and they've clarified some of their positions. I just want to go over kind of what they've said, and also add some more thoughts from yesterday after conversations with other people to further clarify, I think, what some of this means. Some things are better after this statement, but some things kind of aren't necessarily. I'm not trying to be doom and gloomy, but we'll go through it. So here is the pledge they put out this afternoon, I think, some point today. They've got 4 pledges for the community. They've said fair pricing, accelerating Affinity, accessible for all, and community-led. Now, let's go through them one by one. They've shared the news that Affinity have been acquired by Canva. As the dust settles on the announcement, we want to share more about our future together and commitment to the Affinity community. In reality, this probably wouldn't have come if they'd handled it slightly better first time around, but also the realities of some of these things aren't really a surprise, if that makes sense. But PR-wise, they didn't do a great job of announcing it. They probably should have been clearer up front. You can't really read the room or read the future. I'm not entirely sort of dragging them through the dirt. As I think I said yesterday, I've been on both sides of this equation in a very similar company. In fact, in one side of it, I've been acquired by a VC, a company acquired by a VC twice. And I've been working at a company that acquired a beloved piece of software with a very dedicated community before, and I worked adjacent to the marketing team. So I've kind of sort of been here to an extent. Anyway, we're committed to fair, transparent, and affordable pricing, including perpetual licenses that have made Affinity special. So they're saying we're going to continue to allow or continue to provide perpetual licenses indefinitely. That's a good bit of clarification, but not necessarily shocking as such. If that does change, it wouldn't be immediately anyway. Kind of the thing unsaid from yesterday was, under no circumstances will there be a scenario where they don't have some sort of subscriptions, but they've clarified they want to always allow perpetual licensing, which is a good thing. Perpetual licenses are great. Lots of companies that still offer subscriptions also have perpetual licenses as well on top of that. They're just normally disincentivized, and the way they normally disincentivize them is via price. And this is, we're going deep on the first one here already, but if we think about the suspected purchase price of Affinity from Canva's perspective, at some point they're going to have to return that investment, right? They have to get that money back. There's various other things that, there's various other ways they can pull levers to make money for them, but they do still, to some degree, need to sell more licenses. So we've got 2 halves of the equation here. We've got what it means for Canva customers, which I think is their primary push, and also what money can be brought in from existing or future Affinity customers uninterested in the Canva parts. So we've got the interop between Canva and Affinity, which is very good for Canva customers because that means they have the ability to either learn more hardcore software in the context of the thing they already know, which interrupts with it very nicely. The frustrations they have, they can't do in Canva, they have something to refer to do that either themselves, or they can pass a file that they understand over to a designer to do the tweaks they want to do, and then receive it back. Or, there's lots of little workflows and things that they could be on the table in future for Canva to make that experience better for their customers, okay? In terms of the sort of versus Illustrator versus Photoshop debate, right now, I know that a lot of designers have to spend time retranslating things over to Canva. This is post my era of being a graphic designer. Most of the Canva stuff, it existed, but it wasn't where it is today. It was much simpler than it is today. But even back then, they had a similar thing where someone would say, "I want the thing, but make it." Make it a Google Slides, make it a PowerPoint. It's the same thing with Canva, right? Having that interop where you can open up, a templatey based file and something more mature, and then deliver it back with them without that intermediary step of transferring it all and whatever. That's a good thing. I remember for years and years I had this workflow of building things in, like, at the time, actually Affinity or Illustrator, exporting to PDF, importing them into Keynote as a PDF to make them editable, then saving that Keynote file as a PowerPoint, then tweaking that PowerPoint file when things break as a workaround to not use PowerPoint, right? Stuff like that. I imagine a lot of designers are working like that. This will make that part of it easier because a lot of marketing teams, a lot of novice designers do like Canva. So there's a lot of opportunity there. On the opposite side of it, that's a thing where it will be a lever to entice more people over to Affinity. In terms of feature parity, there's still work to be done there. We're not trying to say that, any Affinity products one-to-one a perfect replacement for the Adobe equivalent. They're not. All the Adobe software is 20 odd years older, 20 years more mature. In the case of Designer, when it came out, Adobe kind of pulled their finger out and started adding a lot of features that Designer had from the bat. Now Illustrator's looking better than ever. They've fixed a lot of their performance issues, a lot of the bugs they used to have. It's still not perfect. Nothing's perfect. No software is perfect. But they have responded. But this is a way to entice more of those professionals over into this ecosystem with the lever of, hey, you work with Canva a lot? How about if that was easier? Where they've got a bit of friction there is with things like Figma, right? Because a lot of both of these applications, in fact, a lot of applications currently are losing out to Figma, which is a simpler design tool in a lot of ways to Illustrator. You can also get some sort of interop with Canva, and also the people who don't use Canva, a lot of them are becoming more familiar with Figma, because Figma is also quite easy to use if you're not a professional UX designer. You know, there's extra features, you can make things in it. Anyway, we're getting too deep on this. Perpetual pricing is a good thing. It means they have said that they are committed to, maintaining that part of the relationship, at least for now. They'll do it as long as it makes sense, because they do need to return that value. So there's the money they can make from making Canva better with these tools, and there's the money they can make continue to sell licenses. The problem with that is, if they spent a reported $1 billion or £1 billion or whatever on the company, it's something around that. If they're selling licenses for £50-60 a pop, I did the maths yesterday, it's a lot of licenses. I think that's something in the order of around 20 million more seats. So a seat is the name of a license, right? A lot of companies refer to them as seats. But yeah, they have 3 million they've done in around 10 years. To return that money to Canva, they'd need to do another 20 million seats. That's what they need to do to pay that money back, right? Not necessarily, but that would be purely selling licenses. That's how much. They're cheap. So sorry, long tangent, but the long short of it is, I think perpetual licenses are a very good thing. There's no guarantees here they'll stick to any of this. Still be diligent. But the initial commitment saying we're not getting rid of perpetual licenses, they were saying for the foreseeable, this is still not necessarily guaranteed to change. All this really means is, post-PR crisis, it's been pushed back. They won't cancel off the basis of this. They'll always follow the money. Businesses are going to business. But the takeaway is, I think those perpetual licenses will get more expensive. And simply because, and it won't just be arbitrarily more expensive, it will be probably a measured thing based on the revenue brought in by new subscriptions. They have said that they will be doing subscriptions as well. I think they said, yes, it would be alongside, if we offer a subscription, it will only be as an option alongside the perpetual model for those who prefer it. But a subscription price on a product costs £50 or £60 or whatever it is. It's not a very expensive product. That's very low subscription revenue. And that's not very enticing for Canva. They might make it like $5-10 a month sort of thing. That's 5 months. That's a bit of a steal. But Canva have deep pockets to support for like as long as they want, really, for quite a while at least. So I think in the medium term, the odds are the cost of a perpetual license would go up. Every company would prefer a subscription. As we said in the previous video, spikes in revenue aren't necessarily a good thing. Canva do have deep pockets, but there's only so deep pockets can get if things are costing more to keep around than they're worth. In the perspective from the perspective of a company that large, so I would expect at some point those prices to go up. And to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I think if you're someone who is a hobbyist user, this very much comes from the perspective of like someone who is not really bothered about any of the financial aspects. The pricing of any of this is not necessarily a problem because if they're tools that you need to use, that they cost money, right? But for hobbyist users who are more sensitive, it is something still to be aware of. The odds are these product prices, I would imagine, I could definitely be wrong, the chances are they'll go up. Unless somehow miraculously they sell 20 million extra seats in the next few years. They'll probably have a fixed amount of time, probably circa the IPO time, because Canva said they're going to IPO. Around that time period, they kind of want to have a good chunk of that money returned, right? Because that right now will just be debt sitting there for, it doesn't look good on the company sheets unless it's actively making money by the time the IPO. So they'll be wanting to do that. You don't just buy a company and say, hey, it's worth more now. It needs to make something, especially in this climate. Anyway, going off on a massive tangent, I've just got past number one. We'll try and speed things up. So, accelerating Affinity. Affinity is here to stay or remain the highest quality pro design suite, and will now accelerate the rollout of features. This is kind of a given. I think I said in yesterday's video, they will heavily prioritize the integrations. That I think will remain true. Another thing based off, which I didn't really go into much yesterday, a little bit, I was saying the product's moved a little bit slow. It has moved a little bit slow. This will be something I have to ramp up, but one of the top of the list priorities will be these integrations for Canva. That will just go to the top of the pile. It's not saying at any point that feature work on other parts of the products will stop in favour of it. They won't. What this means is they'll ramp up enough. They'll be giving enough development resource to be able to increase the speed at which they can get features out. Developers take time to get up to speed. You don't just sort of add more. Again, they're not productive straight away. Sometimes developers might not even be productive in a business for 6 months to a year. They need to learn the code base. I have no idea what's going on under the hood with Affinity. I know they ported to Windows pretty rapidly. I think that's probably some part of the reason why they've slowed down, because I think originally it was a very traditionally made Mac application. I wouldn't say it's necessarily hastily ported to Windows, but either way, I don't think it's going to be the tidiest code base, and I think getting more developers up to speed will take a while. But yeah, if they're saying, yes, we are committing to adding more developers, that's just a good thing. I think one thing I didn't say yesterday, which I was sort of thinking quite loudly, but didn't say out loud, is in terms of the rate at which features come out, this remains true, irrelevant to what they say, is it's always based on how much money any of this is worth to Canva, right? So if right now these tools are already mature, they're already functional, and compared to what users have in Canva, from Canva customers' perspective, they are revolutionary, right, in terms of quality. All of the Affinity suite have things that could improve, but they're all good enough. They're all pretty good. They're all very mature, and they're the most credible alternatives to Adobe software that exists. There's no real question about that. They're not necessarily on parity, but they'll work. So in a world where these things are sort of ready to go straight away, if there's not enough financial incentive for Canva, and this is not in the short term, this is in the medium long term, if there's not enough incentive for them to continue development of features, this could change quite quickly. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, just being realistic. You have, for what is Canva's money, very small potatoes. I think Affinity turnover something like 30 odd million pounds a year. That's not a great deal of money. And again, for the size of the amount of licenses they turn over, that's not a huge amount of revenue. I was working like about 10 years ago at a company which was a bit bigger than Serif, but with this very similar sort of actually a much, much smaller customer base, but more expensive products. But even then, at that rate, the maths in there, what I knew of the maths of that company versus what I know of Serif, then that's not a great deal of revenue for if they're making, like 22-30 million pounds a year with the amount of seats they've got. It's not great. It's not a huge deal of money. So this needs to be worth Canva's while to invest the money. Developers are expensive, right? So staff are the most expensive thing in any business. Developers cost a lot of money. So in the short term, awesome. Good news, they've actually committed. They are actually immediately, saying we are going to speed up, whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't say you should set the expectation to, oh, now it's going to fly through features. It might do. I'm not saying it won't, but I think the main thesis of all of this is just be aware whatever companies say long term doesn't necessarily reflect, where the money is. They will always respond. This can always still change. I think the expectation they're immediately going to screw over staff was or screw over customers. Sorry, was always a bit unrealistic. And in terms of subscription pricing turning up, I'm not sure I said this in yesterday's video or not, but it's not something they could do straight away anyway. By the time they get these integrations, like normally with these sort of things, it's normally business as usual for a year or two. Nothing really changes immediately. There's certain things that behind the scenes will happen when a company gets acquired. Normally they'll install some, like the buying company will install some sort of control or sort of like watchdog person, I guess, inside the sort of bought business to ensure how they're spending the funds they've been given, also to get a good understanding of the structure of the company going forward, and how they'll change things going down the line. Whatever the company says in this scenario publicly, I think just take it with a grain of salt. The normal way this goes is company is acquired, the structure of the company is understood, cuts are made, and it is, even if it's not picked apart, it's very rare a company that is a subsidiary long term is ever left to operate identically to how it was. In the rare occasion it can happen, but generally speaking, no, that doesn't happen. Especially in the course of sort of like 3, 4, 5 years, the company that has been purchased will change and the more money the company has spent on the child company, the more sweeping those changes tend to be because of their interest in that company. So I would say from all of these pledges, they can all change. I wouldn't say all is forgiven, but it's good to say that they've confirmed a few of these things. So let's quickly look at 3 and 4. So the Affinity suit will soon be made available without charge to schools and registered non-profits. I'd assume this is a thing already. Um, but this is just a blanket statement saying, hey, we're not evil. That's all we should read that as. Giving away school educational licenses is a good thing to do. It's a good, yeah, I mean, again, this is one of the things with Seraph and their recent incarnation as a company with such a relatively large install base of 3 million seats. For the nature of the software, they should have been in a position to financially do this already. And I can speak directly about this when it comes to installing yourself in educational institutions, and non-profits actually account for a small amount of, it's not really a great deal of revenue for non-profits. It's a good thing to do, but by the time they've registered, you're not losing much money from doing it, and you get to say that you're doing it, and it's a good thing to do. Making things in school or installing your software in schools, which is something where on the 3D front, people say a lot about Autodesk and how much they hate them. And why isn't Blender taking over? And a big piece of that puzzle is education. If you are in school learning 3D, if you're at a big university learning a degree, generally they'll have the stack of software that they teach you as the standard, which means there's people coming out of education already educated in the tools that the industry requires. And if those tools don't change education, they don't change an industry. It's not quite as simple as that, but it helps massively having your tools being the ones that kids are learning, and that money is that investment, or that cost, I guess, for not selling those licenses to schools is realized some point down the line. And I think for a company of perceivably Affinity scale, they should have been able to do this before now, I think. Or maybe they had like educational discounts or volume discounts before. Like having discounts is normally a pretty standard thing. Free for education is even better because it means you've got a financial commitment to say we don't need this money back yet, effectively, right? So if you're investing in future users of your software, remains to be seen how it matters much in the context of education, but it's a good thing to be able to save done. And now they've got pockets deep enough to eat that cost if it doesn't actually get returned, I think, for schools. So that's a good thing. So number 4, community-led. We are committed to shaping Affinity's future, guided by your ideas and feedback. This is something else I can comment on directly as well. Being a very early adopter of Affinity is no. So far, they haven't really done that especially well. I think in the first few years, I spent a lot of time hovering on the forums. There's lots of buzz and lots of excitement because the pace they're moving is breakneck, and I think one of the problems they had, which is a contentious one, is listening to customers too much is a bad thing, especially when they have a direct line of communication with developers. And I think Affinity learnt that. Again, being in a situation where I've been at a company that's acquired another smaller company with very opinionated users, they don't represent the entire market. So you need to start picking who you're going to listen to. So it's a good thing to say that you're doing, but in reality, you have to filter out. If you, especially if you've got 3 million people, or up to, obviously not 3 million, but you have a large amount of users, saying the things they want. You have to then prioritize that and figure out and pass what you want to have. I think they set quite a bad precedent in the early days. Again, I think they may have underestimated how popular this product may have been, and they allowed slightly more access to developers from the community than is probably healthy at that point, in a very unstructured way. And you can see it in the history. If you go into the Affinity forums and you look at a member of staff and you see their interactions, you can see how most staff have reduced. If you scroll right back, you'll notice how they tend to either change the tone of the conversation with users to be much more defensive, or they've started to speak less on the forums because they can't expose themselves that often, because it's that thing of like, you're almost like, if you're a celebrity and everyone wants an autograph and you haven't got a pen that will last that long, do you know what I'm saying? It's not necessarily a good thing to do, but also if you set a precedent saying we will do this, it means that people get frustrated, and I've seen that in the forums. And I think when there's a large signal to noise ratio, if you've got a lot of people saying here's what I want from this product from you, it becomes hard to pass the things that matter, because certain people have certain bees in their bonnets. I know one thing that I don't find personally that useful, I think in general isn't super useful, is image tracing. A lot of and this is going to be contentious, but the big thing that used to keep coming up on the forums for years and years and years, we need image tracing inside Designer. Now I think, like, when you're a professional graphics guy, or girl, or person, one of the sort of earliest things you kind of learn to do when you're working every day in this software is the ability to recreate logos. This thing where you get sent a logo and it's 60 pixels across, and you need it for a print thing, need it now. You learn pretty quickly how to recreate all but the most complex logos. You can kind of learn to rebuild relatively quickly. And for a lot of people, the ability to do that would be faster than the output of even the best image trace things. Image tracing does have uses, but for the most part, it's supposed to be a starting point. And in the case of, it's like most professional graphics people tend to use it in a situation where the output kind of doesn't matter. It just needs to be bigger, but not scrutinized. You wouldn't trace a logo and stretch it up because the output from these tracing algorithms and images isn't good enough, if that makes sense. So it tends to be a feature that I think more hobbyists want to do, because they see it as a utility, or they see it as like a useful feature. That one for me, if I were asked to put that in my vector drawing application, would be heavily deprioritized if I was aiming at professionals. But then we don't have any feedback on how much that matters to Affinity, where it sits on their roadmap, where it fits in terms of their priorities, because at some point you have to be radio silent. In the early days, they're very communicative, and features they basically said, yeah, this is coming. Things change in development. It's not necessarily even a criticism, they do. Some features don't work the way you expect. Some features have ramifications that affect others. Some features actually are kind of crap. You might have a better idea for something which encompasses a lot of the functionality of a certain feature further down the line. That's very hard to explain to an end user who just wants this thing in the software, right? So the better thing to do, which I think a lot of developers learn over time, is you need to limit communication with the community, to be honest. You need to manage it, because it's not really a one-to-one relationship. And especially with such a broad install base as afforded by something which costs £50, with a lot of people who have a lot of different desires from it, with such broad application software, it's going to happen. So this isn't necessarily true. And also on the back of that as well, is like a lot of features that are useful haven't come in. Again, their development has incrementally slowed over the years, and not terrible. I've seen worse, but the idea of getting to V2 of a piece of software almost a decade after V1 is unusual, unless you're extremely mature software with few features. You're not playing catch up, and all of their products are still in that catch up phase. We look at things like, I'll take Maya as an example. Maya's riddled with problems. Autodesk Maya. Um, it's got lots of things it could add. They're very slow, but the broader context is the money that Maya brings in for Autodesk is minuscule. They prioritize the work from big VFX houses because they can pay them for custom development on top of the cut license costs. And also, the bottom of that parallel is it's very, very mature software. It's 35 years old, 40 years old at this point. It's old. It's been around since the early 80s, I think, Power Animator. So there's not much like big feature updates aren't going to be that big, and that's not true for Affinity. And it leads to, especially again, we've got so many users over such broad use cases, everyone feeling a bit let down, in part because you've been over communicative in the past, right, about saying what you're going to do. They need to work out a better strategy for dealing with the community, because if you are someone who's spent time in the forums, you would have noticed over time that it has become more locked down. It has slowly become more structured. If you went there in 2014 or 2015, it was a little bit of a free-for-all. And I think I was chatting with one of them there, like, even at the time, it was the devs were a little bit too forward, they're a little bit too, and sounds like a criticism, but it's actually helpful to not interact with the community sometimes. So this is like, and not disingenuous as such. I think they think they're doing a good job. I think they need to figure this out, but I do think they need greater transparency over their roadmap. And they do probably need to spend less time directly. I mean, I don't spend much time on the forums anymore. Maybe they've got it under control, but they need to manage this. They need to really figure out how to do this, but also they probably do need to do a better job of communicating what they're working on to the community, especially with how broad the tools are, because right now it seems a bit scattershot. But, these two here basically say, we aren't evil, we're keeping things the same. I think the main, I'm going to wrap this video up, sorry. The main TLDR is, all of these things can change. In the case of number one, there's good evidence to suggest that they probably will want to raise prices at some point, but big company has deep pockets, doesn't have to happen straight away. I wouldn't worry too much right now, but the cost of perpetual license probably will increase over time. Also, that being said, for me personally, I don't think that's much of a big deal. I think Affinity's always been too cheap. Accelerating, this can be true in the medium term. They can't get up to immediate speed of development instantly. That's not how that works. Plus, also longer term, in terms of feature development and bug fixing, given the degree, how mature the software is right now, it's only ever going to be at the whims of how much incentive there is for Canva to allow that to continue to happen. Because right now the products are good enough. So they've got only one half of the user base, the existing professionals using it, that will drive the demand for this. And in terms of revenue, it's a much smaller, and will always be, to be honest, a much smaller piece of the pie. So that is dependent in the longer term based on how much financial incentive there is to do so. But there's still kind of good news, and not really unexpected. This is just good. This is unambiguously just a good thing. And this is, I don't know. So basically, just be diligent. Nothing has necessarily really changed in terms of, what the company's said and what's going to be happening going forward. But a little bit of clarity is always good. And maybe they should have done this in the first place, I suppose. And certainly if Canva go and acquire any more tools in a similar vein to Affinity coming forward, they'll probably learn a few things from this and have their PR team do a slightly better job next time round. But anyway, that's the end of the video. And so if you do actually like this kind of thing, I've noticed yesterday's video did relatively well for such a small channel. I'm not like trying to grow it, but if you are actually interested in more of this coverage type stuff from whatever perspective it is I provide, let me know. I can do more of this. They're not much effort. And yeah, have a great day and all that thing, and bye.